Hello, everyone, and welcome to Living a Graceful Life. I'm your host, Denise Medved, and I'm also the creator and founder of the Ageless Grace Brain Health Program worldwide. So I'm here to remind you all that it's never too late to begin making choices to create the life that you want to live. And in the spirit of that idea that we have choices, we can invite more grace into our lives and we can actually improve the quality of our lives. I have a wonderful guest on tonight, Joanna Klein from Journey to Legacy, and she is going to be talking about the power of reframing. Change your story, change your life. Joanna, I'm so happy to have you on this episode.
Thank you for inviting me, Denise. I love doing things with you. It's great.
Same here. I love doing things with you too. So let me tell all of our audience a little bit about Joanna. She is a life story coach, and she also is a guide, and she helps you writing your life story because she knows it's a powerful tool for self-discovery. She believes that when we revisit joyful memories, it offers many rewards, and there's a kind of peace to be found in processing some of the more difficult times in our life. Joanna's created a program that offers a framework for capturing and reframing your story in ways that help you uncover and call forward the best version of yourself, which is what we all want, right? She calls her program Journey to Legacy, as I mentioned before, and she promises that you don't have to be a great writer to be able to tell your own story and create a lasting legacy. Joanna also is a show host on Win Win Women, and her show is called Thrive in Your Third Act. So, Joanna, um, I'd love to ask you how you got into this interesting thing that you do.
Yeah, great question. So it was about my life took a turn about 7 years ago. I was 61 and going through my third divorce. And it was what I call my dark night of the soul, where I was looking at my life and not feeling very hopeful of what was ahead, thinking that the best years were behind me, and at the same time holding a lot of guilt and shame and regret around decisions that I'd made. So I wasn't feeling very good about the life that I had lived thus far. And so I wasn't able to really find, in looking back, the tools that helped motivate me or inspire me or give me hope in looking forward. And so I remembered specifically that day that I was sitting on my meditation pillow and this book caught my attention. I have no idea how it got there. I don't know if I had bought it or if it was given to me as a gift, but there's the way that things kind of work out. It was there, and the book was called, or is called, When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron. And I'm like, all right, here's this book. It's catching my attention. It's telling me to open it. So I opened it, and my eyes went to these words in the book that said, "Your life has been a good teacher and a good friend." And it was that those words just hit me. And it was this moment of kind of truth for myself where I realized I didn't like feeling the way I was feeling, and that it was time to change my attitude. It was time to change my perspective. And so looking at these words, I decided, all right, let me look at my life and see how it has been a good teacher and a good friend. And I started writing down some different stories. I started writing about my three divorces. And as I began to do that, now mind you, I wasn't a writer. I wrote for my work if I had to do some kind of report about something, but I rarely journaled. I know a lot of people journal a lot. I rarely journaled. And so I didn't consider myself someone who used writing as a tool for clarity. But I started doing it at this point and started writing. And at first I was just kind of venting and complaining, and I had myself in the victim role. So I was seeing that life had really kind of done me wrong, and I was seeing myself as the victim of bad marriages. But something shifted in that process. And this was all part of my, okay, it's time for a new attitude. It's time for a new perspective that came to me. And I started deciding to look deeper. These questions started coming to me, like, what's significant about this? And what's your part in this? And as these questions started to just come to me and I started to answer them through my writing, I realized I was the common denominator in these marriages. And there was something for me to learn here. So, a long answer to your question, but that opened up for me this awareness that by exploring my life from this new perspective and writing about it, it started to shift how I saw things. And with that, then came more confidence, more inspiration, more clarity. I started to become the heroine of my stories, and not from the perspective of like da da da, I'm the victor here, but more that I felt empowered, less of a victim and more of an empowered person, that even in those more difficult times, I could see my part and I wasn't always having someone to blame, but instead could see maybe the patterns and could see where I could make changes in my life now that would help me moving forward. So it was from that the idea of writing, helping others write. I've done a lot of program development throughout my 40-year career. My programs have been in nonprofits and educational facilities and in Fortune 500 companies. So I have this gift of program development, and I was able to bring it to my program Journey to Legacy.
Beautiful. Well, I would like to tell everyone that the reason I asked Joanna to be on this show is because I have taken Joanna's course, and it is powerful. And it made a big difference to me. And I would have said at the time, I've kind of got it all in perspective. I know what my good memories are. I know why the bad memories are bad memories. And I have been shocked over the course of about a year of working. That's not how long the program is, but I've done a couple things with Joanna. How many amazing stories I have remembered that I had forgotten about or tucked away, or how many amazing stories came out of me, and as I started writing them, I was seeing them through a whole different lens than if I were telling them to someone. I mean, I'm looking at the words and suddenly I'm accountable for what I wrote on the page, and I'm going like, is that really true? No. Or yes, whatever. So I just want to share with people that I have done Joanna's program before, so that you know. And what I'd love for you to do is to tell us a little bit more about the Journey to Legacy story writing method.
Yeah. Before I do that, I want to share, because what you said, there's something that I'd like to add to, because a client recently who's doing the program was saying she feels better since she's been doing it. And I said, well, what do you think the reason is that you're feeling better? And she said, our lives are like, I love the way she said this, our lives are like a jar filled with big rocks and little rocks. And she said, I've examined those big rocks, those big events in our life, whether it's been in therapy or in some other format where, they're very obvious. You see them, but it's those little rocks that, have fallen to the bottom and that we're not paying attention to so much. But by revisiting the big rocks and writing about them, it's drawing my attention now to the little rocks. And I realized that I have been carrying some baggage or some weight around those little rocks. And by writing about the stories, it's helping me to see them in a new perspective. So whether or not it's been a difficult situation that I really hadn't processed, or even if the little rock represents some joy, that by revisiting, it's allowing me to reconnect with that joy. This process is helping me get to those little rocks. So what you described, Denise, makes me think of that big rock, little rock story that she shared.
I love that analogy of the big and little rocks, because I would definitely say a lot of little rocks appeared to me, and like you say, some of them were really joyful, and I'd almost forgotten about them. And it felt so good to write about them. And sometimes it was about people that were in my life only a short amount of time, but it was a pivotal point in my life, whether I realized it or not. And going back to revisit it in the stories made me realize that was a powerful friendship, even if it lasted for 6 months or a year. So I appreciate that. But do tell us more about the Journey to Legacy method of writing.
Sure. Yeah, so the method was once I realized in doing the program and hearing from the women who were doing it that there is a method to my madness. As I'm teaching the course, we have what I call teaching sessions where I limit it to 12 women at a time in the course. And so we come to the teaching session, we do writing offline, and then come back as a group and share the stories. And during the teaching sessions, I do some visualizations, there's some journaling that happens, and then I provide prompts, and I also provide deeper questions. And so it's through this process that I realize that there's this 5-step formula that I'm essentially using in doing the journey for those doing the Journey to Legacy course. But those of you watching, you can also apply this method if you wanted to dive in to do some life story writing on your own. So it's the 5 steps. It starts with first a mindset of curiosity. So when I say curiosity, when you're going to look back on your stories, it's important to take on that mindset of being open and curious. We so often are carrying judgment or blame or shame or regret, or there's some emotion tied in. And so when we look back, we want to say, let's do this with this lens of neutrality and curiosity, and curious from the perspective, what is it that I have to learn from this story? What was significant about it? Why am I even thinking of this particular event in my life? There's something about it that's calling to me. So the first step is approaching it with curiosity. And then the second step is taking personal responsibility. And Denise, you mentioned that, and I talked about it just in my own reflection and writing about my 3 divorces, is asking, what was my part in this? If it was a difficult story, one where, let's say, as you look back, you've kind of got yourself in the role of victim, then ask yourself, really, did I bring something to that? Did I have any influence? Can I look at this in any other way that really can take my own ownership of maybe I had some part in why things didn't go well? Maybe there's something to learn from here. Like, what is it how can I feel more empowered as I look at the story by taking personal responsibility? And we can also bring that responsibility into looking at our stories of happiness and joy. Like, what did I do to to bring that level of happiness and joy within the story, within this particular situation? Those are great ways to look at past events in our life, especially when those times when we're not necessarily feeling a lot of joy currently. We can look back and say, all right, what did I do to make for that joyful event, or what was going on, and see our part, see our responsibility there. The next step, the third step, is compassion. Because as we look back, particularly at the difficult times, and if there is that shame, that guilt, that regret, or that blame that's coming up, then we really want to bring up the compassion, the self-compassion, compassion for ourselves. If we're so good at beating ourselves up when we look back at things that didn't go well. So compassion for the fact that we know we were doing what the best that we could do at the time. We were working with what we had. Things happen. We're not perfect. And so not holding on to whatever difficult emotions we might be holding on to, can really benefit us by bringing on the compassion, can really help us let go of some of that, and compassion for the other people in our life. I know I had a difficult relationship with my father, and I carried a lot of resentment towards him throughout my life, even after he passed. And when I started writing the story about my relationship with him, and I started diving deeper into who he was as a person, it really opened up my compassion for him and the life that he had grown up with and the circumstances of his life. So bringing on the compassion for ourselves and for others can really help change and reframe our story and lighten us up. The fourth step then is to turn up the wisdom and to recognize, to spotlight the wisdom. We're no longer the person that we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, however far back you want to look. And you can say, even in those situations that you think, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. Well, just the fact that you even had that thought, that you even felt shame or guilt or whatever at any point in time is an indication of your wisdom. It's like, you know better now. You wouldn't do it that same way. And so you can free yourself up and say, all right, given the same circumstances right now, would I do the same things? And your answer is undoubtedly going to be, no, I wouldn't do that. I know better now. So it's an opportunity in reframing to celebrate the wisdom, how much you've grown over the years, how much more you know now, and to honor that, and to honor the wisdom that you see in yourself at a younger age, and the things that you feel proud about. You can connect with that wisdom as well. The fifth step is gratitude. And this is where we really recognize that everything that has happened in our life, in the words of Byron Katie, has happened for us, not to us. And that we can see the blessings, we can see the silver linings, we can see how much we've grown, we can see how much we've learned from even the more difficult times, and know that everything that has happened has made us who we are today, and to be able to feel grateful for those experiences that help build us.
Beautiful, beautifully explained and said. I hope everyone has a similar feeling to mine right now, which is just knowing those steps is a powerful tool to understand some stories that you may be telling yourself in your head, even if you haven't written them down, or that you've repeated out loud to other people for years and years and years. And you mentioned Byron Katie, one of my, I love her technique. And of course, that first question is this true? Is
Right.
this really, and is this really, really, really true? Are you sure it's true?
Right.
It's interesting how we can create stories and just carry them on in the telling of the stories from, I don't know, maybe even from our ancestors, my grandmother telling my mother telling me, and me believing it either about my family or about myself. So those steps are beautiful. I really appreciate those. Tell me what some of the unique things about your program, because I mean, I know everyone has heard of, writing down your stories, but tell a little bit about what makes your program unique.
Yeah, well, I think the commitment to helping people reframe those stories, and to see themselves in an empowered way as they write their stories, and to help them see that if they're having difficulty getting there. I think that is one of the key factors that makes my life story writing class different than others, in that it's so committed to the personal growth, the personal development aspect, and what I call the deeper questions. So I do offer prompts for inspiration. People often who want to take a course like this, or they know they have stories, or they know there's something that they want to share. Maybe they want to leave a lasting legacy for their family. Maybe they want to connect the dots of their lives. But they often are looking for some way to get started. And so I offer prompts, and many life story writing courses do. I think most of them do. But mine then include a set of deeper questions to help you go through this 5-step process that I described. So that's one of the ways that it's different. And another way that it's different is the community. It's a worldwide community. Again, just 12 women at a time, but we're from all over the world. And in sharing our stories, it creates this beautiful sacred space for women to be seen and heard and to have this shared human experience. I think so often we believe that, what our stories aren't very interesting. I think that's one of the things I hear more than anything else is my life hasn't been that interesting, but the experience of sharing the stories, all of a sudden you start getting, when you get the feedback from the other women, and it's just a very affirming community. Denise, you've been part of it, that it's important, I think, in that the safe container that we create in order for us to recognize the impact that our stories have. And by having that community, it gives us courage to be willing to share them with others, those within our life, or to have the courage to decide that I do want to leave this so that, I do want my loved ones to know me as more than a mom, a daughter, a sister, a wife, a friend. I want to be known as who I am. And so that being seen gives that sense of helps, I think, give courage. And then the last thing is that I've created a customized writing platform where people who take my course are able to log in. They have their own private login, username and password. And so it's private and secure, and they're able to get the writing prompts there, do the writing, see the deeper questions, and have this place where they can organize it and create what I call a legacy journal. Because my hope is that through the process of doing the course, that everyone comes out feeling so proud of their lives and so clear of who they are and so willing to be seen now in a way they haven't before, that they're wanting to create this legacy journal that they can do on my writing platform. And it's very user-friendly. I've set it up based on knowing my audience so well. And even the women who consider themselves the most tech challenged have found it to be very easy to use.
I'm laughing because those of you who are listening to our show today know that I consider myself to be tech challenged. And yes, Joanna has created a very user-friendly platform for this. I would like to say this, that the prompts that she gives are really powerful, and I this might be a surprise, but I wonder if you would be willing to offer the group that is here today a prompt that they could write down and think about during, this coming week. And maybe they'll say, gee, I'm going to try to write one story. I'm going to remember something. And actually, as I'm saying this, I'd just like to point out to all of you is right away, it probably popped into your head some story, and it may be one you thought like, oh, I don't want to write about that one, or oh, that's ridiculous, that's not really a story. But probably the thing that just popped into your head is a really good story to write about and tell. But this would give you a little time to see how it feels to write a story from those 5 points of view that Joanna gave you. Remember, starting with with compassion, right? And
Right.
would you reiterate the 5 and then give them a
Sure.
prompt?
I will. So I'll give you a prompt, and then I'll say the 5 steps again. So one of my favorite prompts is think of a time in your life when you look back on it and you say, I can't believe I made it through that. And by thinking of one of those times, then you're thinking about, wow, first of all, you made it through that. What did it take to make it through that? And we all have those periods where we think like I did when I talked about my experience 7 years ago, where I didn't think I was going to make it through that. So what did it take to make it through that? And those 5 steps then again is, first, approach it with curiosity. So rather than looking back with like fear or sadness or anger or blame or all the stuff that can come up. It's like, okay, now I'm going to look back and go, okay, so what was going on at that time? So curiosity, and then responsibility. What was my part? How did I show up in there as objectively as you possibly can? And then bring on the compassion, especially if the self-judgment starts coming at that point. The self-critic will show up sometimes. And then wisdom. What have I learned from this experience? What do I know now that I didn't know then? What did this experience teach me? And then gratitude for the blessings and the lessons and the beauty that came out of it.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So I I could talk to Joanna all evening, and there's so many interesting things to talk about, and it sets the wheels turning. So unfortunately, the time for the content of our episode is coming to an end. So I'd just like to let you know that if you want to find out more about Joanna or about her program or working with her in some other capacity, her website is journeytolegacy.com, JOURNEYTOLEGACY.com. And she has a show also that I mentioned. It's called Thrive in Your Third Act. It's Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific time, which is 5 p.m. Eastern time. And you can extrapolate if you happen to be from Mountain Time or Central Time or Australia time or one of those. And I also would love, you all know that I love to close my show with one of the tools of Ageless Grace that ties into what we've been talking about tonight. Because grace is not only about creating a more pleasurable life, which is the root of the word grace, gratia, gratus, but it's also about addressing your physical self, your brain, your mental self, your mind, your emotions, and your spirit. And so moving is really key to that and very important for all of us, even after sitting as long as we have, which has only been 27 minutes. But it's important to move around. So one of the tools that I think invites more grace into your life as well as stimulates your brain and your body is called Spelling Bee. And I felt like that's a really important one because it has to do with writing, except we're not going to write in a journal, and we're not going to write with a pen. We're going to write with our hands and our arms and our nose and our belly button and our tailbone. So I'm going to slide back just a little bit. I'm not going to show you everything, but I'm going to slide back just a little bit, and I'm going to put on some music, and I want you to join with me. You'll see in a second that I'm barefoot because that's the best way to stimulate your body. There's 7,000 nerve endings in each foot, and that goes to your brain and your spinal cord, and it wakes up everything. So I'm going to put on some music, and we're going to spell, guess what we're going to spell? The word story in upper and lowercase cursive with both hands, S-T-O-R-Y. Now I love this word because it has a T in it. Go back and cross your T. Spell the word story again as large as you can in the air, S-T-O-R-Y, and be sure to cross your T. One more time, S-T-O-R-Y, and go back and cross that T. Now, I want you to write legacy with your foot in the air. L-E-G-A-C-Y. Legacy. Because it could be a legacy you're leaving for yourself. It could be a legacy you're leaving for your kids or your grandkids. Spell it at least 3 times. L-E-G-A-C-Y with your foot in the air. Upper and lowercase cursive. Now, guess what? You have another leg. So spell legacy with this leg. L-E-G-A-C-Y. You should be feeling better already. Just because we're moving, we're thinking, we're engaging our brain and our body. L-E-G-A-C-Y. You're lucky. There are no I's to dot. There are no T's to cross. Legacy. One last time. Now you know I'm going to get the word journey in here also, right? So with your nose, write Journey. Journey. Let's write it twice with their nose. Journey. Now my favorite body part, the belly button, right? Journey with your belly button. Journey. Don't get seasick. So this simple little game is activating all of the 5 primary functions of your brain just by spelling with your different body parts simultaneously. Journey. And then make one big exclamation point all the way down. Boop! Or maybe 2. Boop! So thank you so much for helping me play with a little bit of ageless grace. And so I just want to remind you one last time why we're here and why we're talking about living a life of grace and inviting more grace in. It's because it's never too late to begin making choices to create the life you want to live, regardless of your age, your income, your geographic location, how many people are in your family. You can always make those choices. And thank you, Joanna, for being with us on this episode. We really appreciate it. Quick little what if. What if every one of us were to write one story this week, and it might change our perspective or our attitude or perhaps our lives. I think together we could change the world.